coming to you from the all-new Live House in Hollywood, California.
Hey everybody, welcome to this week's episode of Pensado's Place. In a minute, two of audio's finest are going to share some very important information that you can use. All this brought to you courtesy of the producer and engineers wing of NARIS. But first, entries are flying in for the Sweetwater Gear Fest Getaway. That's an all-expense-paid trip for one lucky winner and a companion to the annual Gear Fest on the amazing Sweetwater campus. It takes place June 21st and 22nd. Free travel, free hotels, gift card for $200 so you can grab and party and have a good time. And plus you get to attend the Pensado live appearance, meet Dave and I backstage, and we look forward to meeting this lucky winner. Gear Fest has major artists, producers, engineers, panelists, workshops, and all the gear you can handle, and you get to rub shoulders and enjoy it all. Hurry up, we suggest, don't delay, enter right here, submit your info, and we'll announce in 3 weeks. Looking forward to that. And while you sign up for Gear Fest Getaway, also sign up for our newsletter so we can keep you up to speed. And if you would, please like, subscribe, and click notify. Dave, what's our ITL?
I recently worked on a track by Mike Rebel featuring T-Pain. I did some new effects on him. I want you to check it out. It's not unusual for us mix engineers to get just the vocals for an artist. Now this is a feature for T-Pain, and so T-Pain does his rap over that instrumental, and then they send it back to me to add into the mix. Now T-Pain and almost all the rappers that you hear, in fact a lot of artists, in order to make sure they sound the way they want to sound, they'll have their engineer add the auto-tune, their engineer add compression and EQ, and so you get it finished, so you don't have to really do very much, and nor do they want you to do very much. So let's take a look inside this mix, and I think you'll find it fascinating what we did with it. There's two components. There's his verse, which I'm not going to show you today, and then there's the chorus. He put together a melody that just is really, really good. You'll hear it. But let me set you up. Here's a little piece of the verse. Now, this is my friend Mike Rebel, and it's featuring a Chinese artist named Wang Yitai, and then of course T-Pain. Here's a little piece of his verse.
Hey, you've been too busy trying to be wavy. Them niggas is not worried about your safety. If you keep shining on that corner, they gon' gun you down. Take that shit that you've been flexing lately.
Pretty cool, huh? T-Pain. So let's jump right in and show you the chorus. Man, I love that melody. So let's see what we did to enhance it. Here's without what I did. A little bit louder, but I think you guys are experienced enough to hear it. So what'd we do? Just trying to enhance the energy, the emotion, the feel, the vibe. I don't want to change too much of the EQ or the compression, those types of things, because, like I said, it's pretty good. So let me play this little piece and I'll A/B some stuff for you. And I'm getting a lot of mileage out of Nectar. Let me show you what I did on this. I'm paralleling into it. I'm not sure people utilize that technique as much as I do. I'm gonna run through this real quick, so just stop your YouTube when you want to copy some of these settings. So it's a lot of things. Let's show what we're doing. paralleling into Nectar. This is Nectar 2, but Nectar 3 is really good too. And then a new plugin that just came out is Harmonics by Softube. You know, they make great stuff, so let's check that out. Pretty cool. And then, you know, some standard stuff, a reverb, just a basic reverb, then a spring reverb. And the spring reverb, I heard Tom Elmhurst on a mix, and I fell in love with the effect he had, so I asked him what he used, and he said a mono spring reverb. So this is a mono spring reverb on those vocals. And so that's about it. What you're trying to do is little chunks, little bites here and there and here and there. It's not one big thing. It never is one big thing. I use this group of plugins a lot, and what I'm trying to do is this number 2 compressor by Stephen Slate. Stephen actually worked on this himself. It adds a roundness to the bottom that helps it feel important. And then this is some high-end color, some low-end color, and then this is Fabrice Gabriel's world-famous top-end EQ. And so all of those things combined are more adding, like I said, a feel to the part. Harmonics are very important. That's the difference between a simple waveform and a complex waveform. And our brains like to hear complex waveforms. That's why we like analog stuff so well, is because the saturation we get from tape or some of the coloration we get from analog gear adds extra harmonics. And those harmonics come in even and odd. And I tend to like even harmonics, so that's what we're kind of adding in here. We're using, you get your choices of different types of color, and this plugin is just brand new, and I'm finding a lot of uses for it. So, you know, it's a little bit to digest. Think about it. Maybe rewind it a little bit. I'm moving pretty quick because that's what we do these days, you know. And we'll see you next time.
A couple of areas of real importance that you need to know about are file delivery and the recommendations that are constantly evolving, and high-res music production. Our good friend Maureen Droney at the Producer and Engineers Wing have provided a couple of audio giants and experts in that area. We recently had a discussion with them. We want to share it with you. So please enjoy our talk with Jeff Balding and Leslie Ann Jones. Hey, guys.
Hey.
Thanks for having me.
Hey.
Good to see you, Benny.
Good to see you.
Now, the reason you guys are here this time is, and we often do this with our friend Maureen at the Recording Academy, is we like to show that the Recording Academy is thinking about engineers, thinking about the stuff that's important to them. And there's 2 separate issues that you both have overseen, put together actually these papers, correct?
Yeah.
So why don't you define, one of them is delivery, recommendations for projects, and the other one is high-res audio. Jeff, you're the delivery guy, right?
Yeah.
Define it and what brought it about and all that stuff.
Well, what brought it about was a need. I mean, the industry had a need because as technology changed and deliverables became anything, even a data DVD that would get turned in that didn't have any labels on it.
It was just all over the map, wasn't it?
So it was all over the map. So there was a real need to try to find some best practices that could be recommended for people to pick up and use. And you know, these concerns come from content owners, labels, as well as engineers and producers, because as projects would get passed through and down through the process, I mean, you wouldn't know what you had, what you were receiving. It just got a little unorganized and unwieldy, you know?
Which ultimately can affect the content. And
well, it does, and that's the asset,
right,
for the content owner. I mean, that's what they spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on and want to retain.
That's the money.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's important in what we do. High-res audio, tell us about it.
Well, I've been, you know, from even before my years at Skywalker, have been recording in high-res audio, and as it became, sound quality has become much more important as digital has improved. And many of us in the Producers and Engineers Wing have been talking about sound quality. What can we do about educating not only our members on it, but students as well as professionals on why high-resolution audio is important. So we finally decided that it was time to do a set of recommendations for it. Actually, Jeff's and his committee's work on the master delivery recommendations was a good model for us, because we could see that if you get, a good group together, that you can come out with a great outcome.
Your takeaway from all of this, Leslie, what do you think was one of the most valuable recommendations that the committee made? Which one are you most proud of, I guess I would say?
Well,
it's a wide range of subjects that are included in these two books.
Yeah, and I think the proudest thing for me is I'm always interested in hearing differing opinions. I make the records I make. They're not the same records Jeff makes. They're not the same records you make. And one of the big acknowledgments about this document is the fact that we all make records differently, and where could we find common ground in terms of trying to get people to understand what high-resolution audio means, that it's not, something unattainable. It's not something that requires a lot of money anymore. It's just something that requires the same kind of practice we all grew up with. There's an integrity about it, and so I think that's the thing I'm the most proud about, is that somebody could read this document and understand why it's important.
Jeff, from your perspective, do you think that the way that metadata is handled and the way that credits are handled will improve our ability to get credits through Spotify and Apple and all that? Because we'll have a central place for it, a central standardized method of logging this information. Will that make it easier to transition that information over to the streaming services?
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're talking about the DDEX recommendations and stuff, or standards, guidelines. Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's a good thing.
It's a great thing, and it's a worldwide standard as well.
Yeah.
And so that was totally foundational and necessary to get this thing moving. And we're seeing a lot of momentum pick up on this. And I know the Producers and Engineers Wing, as well as the Recording Academy, has got some great initiatives coming up towards crediting and helping move that along. We're seeing, before, I think we might have been one of the few people sort of raising the flag on that. And now we're seeing a lot of people want to come on board, because they're realizing, well, we all know that's how we get paid. Yeah. That's our business card. Yeah. I mean, it carries so much weight, credit does, for a career.
If they don't know what we do,
it's
they
so
don't
important,
hire
and
us.
it's an educational process. So as people learn and go, oh yeah, okay, I get it. That somebody hears that and knows I worked on it, then I might get their project and the next one and the next one. You build a career on that. Not to mention the royalty streams and things that have to have that information.
Good stuff.
It's crucial.
How has the adoption been on both of these programs from not only the Producer and Engineers Wing, which we love? We actually don't think there could be a Recording Academy without the P&E Wing. I'm biased, obviously, but that's true. And has it gone outside of the P&E Wing community to folks? Are they starting to get it and get on board and make the changes?
The deliverables recommendations have definitely been adopted, and you're seeing what this is these are recommendations and they're best practices. So a label can look at these and go, you know what, we like 9 of 10 of these. And then this is meant to give you a structure to build from, a best practices to build from. And then you put the things, just as we'll get in, we can maybe talk about folder hierarchy, but some of those things they're a starting building block. And then you build from there. And we've seen, all the major labels adopt these. We've seen many people, even around the world, adopt it. In fact, the last revision, we took into account that this is an international document now.
Great.
And we tried to, keep in mind that everything had to match that.
Go through some of the recommendations. Break down. You're the dude.
I'm the dude.
That's right.
The committee's the dude. See if I can remember him. You really put me on the spot.
I did. That's our job.
There's some of it you might want to read right before you go to bed. Because it can get technical and be a little dreamy. There's primary deliveries and minimal delivery, or preferred and minimal deliveries. The difference between those is making sure that on a minimal delivery is just basically delivering what you have on 3 hard drives, a master and 2 safeties. So preferred, you get into bouncing broadcast wave down, consolidated files, consolidating plugins, committing those if they're important to the production. You're basically a preferred delivery. You're trying to make sure that's going to be retrievable for a content owner in 5-10 years, so that if there's a greatest hits, they can pull up what they need to get. There's other things we've went into lately, such as folder hierarchy. We feel like organization and making sure that
So important.
It's important to the content owner, but it's also important to everybody down the
I
line.
love that chart.
Yeah, and that there's a respect, and there's something that you want to make sure everybody down the line is being able to find stuff and do things. And we put together this chart. We had people representing different genres, different parts of the industry, and that's how we like to do it, because we want everybody's feedback in this. It wasn't just the P&E wing people that were in this, even the delivery recommendations in general. We had label people, we had a lot of different people in the committee, because we want everybody to come to the table and go, okay, that works for me, this doesn't work for me, but those things do, and find that common ground that everybody can build off of and have a solid foundation. And this folder hierarchy is one of those things. A lot of us, as you know, we'll work on a project for 5 years. I mean, I have anyway. And when you cut a track, the same song at 3 different studios over 3 years, and you're looking for this and that, and maybe that bass part off of that one.
3 different assistants.
And you got to know where everything is. So
go crazy.
this is, again, just a building block. You can download this off the website as well, and so you don't have to build it out. You can download this, and then you customize it. You customize it for what you need.
One of the things several things that I'm glad you covered in this, because true story, one of the top executives in the industry was doing a greatest hits package somewhere around the late 90s and early 2000s, and he had to actually go get CDs to get the material. There was a period there when we were transitioning to Pro Tools where it was impossible to, there was no storage method. We had the Sony tapes, they would just vaporize it eventually, so CDs. What are you doing towards not just getting the backup systems and organized and all that, but to talk with the manufacturers about something that has 30, 40, 50 years longevity? Because without that, the backups have a less useful nature.
Well, and there is a stumbling block, and there's relationships that the P&E wing have with manufacturers and the manufacturing council, actually, where they get together and talk about these issues.
Is there any progress?
And there's always progress.
They're always getting better.
Things are always getting better. And we look at these products, there's no endorsement of companies within the document. It's more looking at, going, okay, do you want an enterprise grade hard drive? What quality of hard drive are you going to put your product, your art? How are you going to preserve that? And we revised that list of what we think is short-term and long-term media.
Yeah, that was eye-opening for me, the list.
Also, the labels, I think, are much better at, there was a period of time, I remember working at a label, and, it was that period of time where they would pull one tune off and digitize that and not bother to digitize the whole record. And that has stuck with me all these years because everybody was waiting for the next big thing. And in the meantime, they were missing the opportunity to digitize what they had then. I do think labels have gotten much better at that because now they have people on staff whose responsibility is doing that. But also about the master delivery requirements, even though there's a lot of it that pertains to labels, many of us don't work with labels. Many of us work with self-released artists. And so I think it would be a misrepresentation to think that this is only for engineers that work for labels.
That was my question.
I think the file hierarchy, the methodology between how you start a session, what you do, recording in stems, hard drives, all of that that's in the document is true whether you're working for Warner's or whether you're working for an independent artist who's releasing their own thing.
Well, this is a great thing too. I mean, even to students, coming out of school.
That's what I was going to say.
This is something. Even to songwriters, I speak to songwriter students, and I say, look at this. If somebody calls you in 5 years for something that a song you've written, do you know where it is?
They wanted the
do you know where it
track,
is? And do you know where the multi-track is? If they want to buy that and use that,
you guys
within
went
the
through
tracks.
a great length, really, to help and make sure that the less advanced person would get this, and also the top guys would get it. I mean, it's very clear when you read these. I read it online.
It's never too early to start best practices.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, the sooner you start it and develop good habits and it builds into
Great
your
point.
work, the more it's going to be
I
appreciated.
think that the habits that, we're all somewhat of the same generation, and the habits we all developed from when we first started continue to be with us. And so what we're really trying to do is establish guidelines to help people develop those habits and be able to keep them, those with them for their entire careers.
And I think hopefully one of the effects is that it keeps people away from habits that aren't productive for you, that a lot of people think are cool to do or in the genre.
And we learned the hard way on some things.
Absolutely,
So it's like
and they don't have to based on your work.
when you had a master and a safety drive and you're backing one up and the AC goes out and you lose both of them.
And you're done.
And you don't have a third one, you're done.
It's
and you learn the hard way.
And by
then
the
you go,
way-
okay, now 3 drives or 3, 2, 1.
Right.
3
By the
drives,
way,
2 different places, work on one.
If you've got all your hard drives in the same building, you're not backed up.
On the high-res side, do you find anything that is genre-specific? When people hear high-res, do they think classical or jazz and they don't think, hip-hop or something else? Have you run into that?
Yeah, and that yes.
Yes.
And in fact, when we first started talking about this, I remember certain people, saying, oh, well, people just don't work like that, and you will never know where the project's going to start, how many people it's going to go to, And that's why we wanted to involve so many people that do all different kinds of records in this from all kinds of genres, because some people do a lot of classical like I do, and of course high-res is just what we do. There are other people that are doing hip-hop and they don't even really think about that. And so it's not genre specific at all. Just because you're high res doesn't mean you can't still use an 8-bit sample.
Right, exactly.
And it was very interesting hearing different people's take on that, how they made their records, and I think a lot of that went into the document, acknowledging the fact that, as I said, we don't all work the same. For instance, a lot of people thought, well, it's rock and roll. It's going to sound thrashy anyway. Why would you want to do that high res? You want like a 16-bit sound. Well, the reality is, as Jeff pointed out, you don't know what's going to happen to your music 5-10 years down the line.
Right.
And it's not up to us to determine that. We're there as a service provider for the artists. It's their art. And to be able to record their art at the best possible level, the highest rate, allows reuse,
And
it's future-proofing.
Yeah.
And on the high-res side of this, because I want to hear the recommendations as well, part of, I'm sure, the thought process was how high-res audio would deal with streaming services and Spotify. Was that part of the thought process?
Well, it wasn't actually. I think that was another thing that instigated our finally, putting together these recommendations was because of the evolution of streaming services where you have, or even download sites. So the HD tracks and other sites like that, the fact that the major labels were getting more involved in high-res downloads. Now you have CD quality and high-res streaming with Qobuz and Untitled, of course, which is CD quality. And other streaming services. So there was a recognition on our part that there's a monetization factor of this as well, that we need to recognize and be able to kind of lead our artists into as a way for them to find other ways of distributing their product.
Now-
and if
now-
I could add, even
Sure.
the high-res document, we're seeing, labels and everybody adopting, asking for 96K 24-bit now.
Yep.
Because they want to be able to monetize it on a
need
high-res
every option.
site. And they want it future-proof so that as things get closer, because, the whole goal is for the consumer to hear it as we hear it in the studio. I mean, that's the whole goal.
I had one label actually, when I turned them onto the document, and they called me back and said, okay, this is just what we're going to ask for now. They're going to use the high-res document as their guide for when they have direction in terms of how projects are going to
So
start.
now you have the Jeff pressure question, which is summarize the recommendations that the high-res paper, the conclusions that you guys came to, if you can.
Well, I think there's a couple of things. The first thing, as I said, is it's not rocket science. Computing power has gotten to the point. I can understand 5-10 years ago where you would say, well, I don't want to spend $10,000 for a computer in order to do high res. That's not the case now.
Or hard drives, store it.
I'm doing 192 on my laptop.
Exactly.
And I'm editing at home on my laptop now. So depending on what your track count is, depending on it's far better, of course, if you're starting the project, if you can set that precedence. There's a industry standard for high res, which is 48K 20-bit. Anything better than CD quality is considered high res. But and that was agreed on by the labels, by the P&E wing, and by several other organizations. But our recommendation is a minimum of 2496. Many of us are at 32192, which is what all my projects are, and many other people that I know. But 2496 is the minimum that we're thinking is best. And you could do, hundreds of tracks at that point and not impede anyone's process. So that would be one of the major recommendations. And just being able to follow through with that through all of the projects that you're doing. If anybody along the chain changes that is what makes it difficult. And we know in certain genres there are many hands-on projects.
Sure. Yeah.
But I think that's part of us educating the artists as well, because they're the only constant sometimes in these projects. There's no executive producer. There's 12 tracks, 12 producers, 12 engineers, and so we've been very successful in getting artists to realize the
Because it'll be
importance of
punitive
this.
on them if
Yes.
it changes. They become the inflection point where either money's affected, credits are affected, quality of music's affected,
Totally.
all that stuff. So if they don't sign on, they probably get it the quickest when they see the threat impending.
Also, too, I was wondering, was any I'm not being negative, but was there any thought given to the fact that if an entry-level person with not a lot of money is working at 196, that's spending like 4 times the amount of money on hard drives, which a lot of times you can't spend. Although hard drive prices have come down, it's an argument I would also use with myself. But that's a lot of storage, you know what I'm saying? And not everybody can afford 3 duplicates of that. You know?
Well, there is that. The 3 duplicates is on the master delivery side, and of course the storage is on the high-res side. I would say if you're doing 2496, depending on how many tracks you have, it's not an insurmountable expense.
Just twice,
as you said, the price of hard drives is
coming down, crazy.
And important for the audience to know, you can find out all these details at producersandengineers.com. Scroll down to the technical details section and then click, and you'll be able to pull up these papers and read it for yourself and dig in and see what it is.
And they both have minimum and preferred requirements.
Right.
So as Jeff was saying, here's the sort of minimum you should expect to deliver to your artist or to your label, and here's what we recommend. And the same thing on the high-res side. Here's the minimum we recommend that shouldn't hurt you in any way in terms of track count, storage, or anything like that. And here's the optimum. And anywhere in between that gets you the goal.
One thing, too, that I want to mention that's in both documents, because these documents, one thing we did was harmonize them so that the information is consistent between them. But one of the biggest things besides organization is that people could take away is file naming conventions, which is basically how you name your file, especially your mix files or your stems, and make sure you have the artist initials. Well, there it is. You have the artist initials, the song title, the mixer initials with the version number of the mix, and then whether it's a master, a vocal up, a drum stem, whatever it is, and then the sample rate and bit rate. And those things, when you pass a file, that way if you're passing a file off to somebody, you got a beat, you're passing it off, somebody put a bass on it or a guitar or whatever, a vocal, they have pretty much all the information. In fact, on stems, when they do that, bounce them out and send them to somebody. I even recommend putting the BPM in there. That way, when somebody gets it, you're not guessing anything. You know what sample rate it is. You're not sending an MP3. All you got to do is send some download link, and they can get a high-res file and do an overdub to it.
You know, when you think about it, in the time before you guys took this on, it must have just looked like the wild, wild west out there. I mean, just however anybody, just a nightmare of things. I mean, you couldn't really go past one generation, past one guy. By the time you pass it to the next person, God only knows. Is that what you were seeing out there?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And, and that makes me think these are living documents. They get reviewed every year, so they're current. And they're addressing what's happening in the industry, what the needs are and the concerns. So.
And they're both, I think, showing a level of respect, not only for the artists that you're working with, but a level of respect for your fellow engineers and producers as well. If you're going to record vocals, don't you want the next person? If Dave's going to mix my track, don't I want Dave to know what the right vocal is?
Most advantages you can give him.
And, I mean, why would I want him to have to guess? Because I want to make sure that my work as the tracking engineer or the vocal engineer is represented on the mix. So it's really in my best interest.
100%.
Well, and then that gets Dave going, if somebody says, who should I get to do this? He'll go, you should get her.
Right.
So it gets you more work when you do it right.
Well, in a weird way, it builds community. I mean, part of what, right? Yeah. Part of what when Maureen and I have been talking about this for a while, how to pull this together, and we couldn't get her up on stage, she's sitting out in the audience now, and we'll spend some time talking about Maureen, of course. But part of it is that I love the way the P&E wing, once it figures out where it's going to go, says, hey, let's open up our arms to lots of folks. It's not just the pros. It's good for for our particular audience and so forth, which is a mixture of both. Yeah. Because if you get better earlier and you've got the skills, you're just going to be better, and then you become part of the referral process, and you start part of the crediting process, and part of the showing your skill set, and you make more money. You make a living, and you move forward.
And then you're on the P&E wing, and then eventually you're on Pensado's place.
Yeah. Well, then it's going downhill at that point in time.
Hey guys, real quick. I was impressed with the length of the list of contributors. It was, I don't know, it could be 100 or something or more. Can you do some name dropping and bragging and just tell us a couple, like not in any order of importance, but just the ones that come to mind? And I'll start it off: Ciccarelli, Massenburg, Jean-Marie, Horvat, Ludwig, on and on and on and on. And then you had representations from different genres and different age groups and different generations. It was a very thorough list, and did I leave?
That's great, and it's important that we had that diversity within those committees to really,
you couldn't do it any other
pour
way.
in, because you don't want to make it for one person. You want to make it for everybody within the industry, no matter what level they're working at, because this is important.
And you get, it has to be inclusive.
Yeah, it's anybody that's making art. It's like if you're making art and you want to preserve it and you want to make sure that it's what it needs to be, especially if it's unheard and somebody goes, we need to get that out.
Right. Right.
you know you've done it right.
Let's go the other side of Dave's question, because
Right.
knowing you guys, the caliber of your work, your own professional brand standard, you both have just done incredible work over the time. You're 8-time Grammy nominated, is that correct? Mm-hmm. And yeah. Leslie, your career is genius and legendary and, you know, Tech Hall of Fame and all that stuff. Yeah. You have to know it and love it to jump in there and go. It has to be more than just an assignment, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, because you don't get this kind of thoroughness unless you get committee members and also head up by people like yourself to do it. So all those names are important, but the steering of it is just as important. So kudos to you guys.
Well, thank you on behalf of my group of people for doing this. It took a lot of effort. How long did you spend on this?
I don't know.
From conception to end, 2 years.
Conception. You had a whole set of delivery requirements first, right?
Delivery recommendations was, well, when it was born, 2002 is when we started on it.
Wow.
And it's been through several revisions since then. The last one was done just this year.
Wow.
And the first, you know.
And it will just continue to evolve, right, as the technology evolves?
Yeah, every year we're looking at it,
well,
making sure it's current.
I mean, really,
so a lot of work goes into it.
Thanks for that.
Yeah, it took most of 2017, I think, for us to do the high res. We had dozens of calls with different groups in each call, mixers, tracking engineers, mastering engineers, studio owners and managers, label folks, and to get everybody's opinions on them. And in fact, Maureen and I were just talking today that, you know, this is probably the year now that this has been out for a while and things have changed, to look at it again, try and update it. So these are all living documents, and because our industry changes
all the time.
Constantly.
All the time.
And our goal this year is really to get out to the educators. I mean, get out to the schools, get out to the students, and get this stuff in their hands, you know?
Did you, in your own personal journey, did you learn a lot doing it? Or did you already know it and just, because it seems like such a big undertaking,
I think even a lot of us on the deliveries recommendation committee definitely learned from each other. I mean, it's community. When you get together, it's like, I do it this way, you do it that way. It's like, maybe I need to try that. And so there's a lot of kicking around. A lot of people are passionate about the way they do it too. And so, you know, you bump a little, but it's a good thing, because you get to something and all of a sudden it's like, of course, that's it. That's it. So yeah, it's a beautiful process.
Yeah, it's rock and roll.
Yeah.
Well, and you know, I mean, isn't that the Recording Academy and the P&E wing in a nutshell? You know,
absolutely.
I mean, those of us that have been involved for many years, we get to hear differing opinions, not only from producers and engineers, but from instrumentalists, songwriters, arrangers, everyone involved in the business. And you learn early on that it's not just about you.
Right.
You know, that you really need to encompass that. And I think, so when we go to make papers like these and develop them and chair these committees, we already kind of have that set of values that we want to hear other people's opinions. I loved hearing how people work, because I don't work like that.
That's right.
And it kind of gave me, in some cases, ideas on trying, you know,
absolutely
different things.
Did the, I hate to put in, did the younger community of, you know, whatever category, were they as engaged in contributing to both these papers?
On my committee, yes.
Is that right?
Yeah, very much so.
That's good.
Very passionate about it.
Good for you guys to know. That's important. Important thing to. Well, that's just fantastic. So, what's next now? Do we get this information out to more people, to educators, chop it up, make it more digestible? Is it all those kinds of things?
Well, I think we'd probably like to, you know, there's in the case of the high-res doc, there's the whole document, which kind of gives a lot of theory, a lot of history, but there are some particular sound bites. I hate to use that term, but I think there's some abbreviated sections of it that can be put out there that would be easy to just use. And I do think education's a big part of it, because I think we're all interested in people not just thinking, oh, isn't this cool? I have Pro Tools on my laptop and I'm recording in my bedroom. But if you want to be serious about your career, and if you respect the people you're working with, that you're going to want to be able to use a lot of this. So education, I think, is a big part of it.
If somebody wanted to become a contributor to some of these types of things, do they have to be famous? Can they find a way to get information?
Well, we take feedback year round. So in fact, a lot of people do email, the P&E wing, and they'll say, I wish this, or I have a problem with this, whatever it is, and we take all that into the committees.
Do they have to be a member of NARIS? They should be,
not necessarily. Okay. No. I think we, when we looked at the list of people that we wanted to be involved in, it was more about what they did in the genres and the point of view they could contribute to the conversation than whether they were members or not. And as you said, of course, we want everybody to be members, but that's not a requirement. And so if somebody feels that they can contribute, they should just reach out to the P&E.
Although once they figure out what the Recording Academy and the P&E wing really do, all the efforts from advocacy to everything, it's like, I don't know how you don't want to be involved.
Saving people's lives. Music cares is like...
music cares is
insurance. Huge. Yeah, absolutely. It can be that basic sometimes. Before we wrap up, anything on the delivery side that you want that need to emphasize? Just get involved and use
this. Hopefully we're looking to break this down into digestible bites and get that out there, because like I said, file naming convention's huge. If you just do that, if you get one thing out of this, get that.
Absolutely.
So that your files are labeled correctly. And then the next thing would just be the storage, the backups. Make sure you're backing your stuff up so you don't lose it.
Literally at NAMM, I ran into Bobby Lombardi. And I was like, Bob, you got to come on the show. We need to talk about storage and how important it is, and where, even though you'll have a particular point of view, just wanted to approach it from an intellectual standpoint so that they it's so critical, what you need to do. On the high-res side, Les, anything we missed? Anything you want to emphasize?
No, I would just, say what I said earlier. You never know what's going to happen with the work that you do, I remember doing a rough mix for Narada Michael Walden, and it ended up being on the record. You think, it's just a rough mix.
Right.
You never know. And so why not start from a place that you can do the best that you possibly can within your economics, within your computer power, within all of that, and just try and start from there.
Herb, did you just call her high-res Les?
I did, but you picked that up.
I like that. High-res Les.
I'm fine
it's got
with
a
that.
ring to it.
Can I get that blazoned on
Do
my
a tattoo that says HRL. Before Dave wraps it up and takes us home, I think we'd all agree on this. I think she's completely underserved, so I have bias. Shout out to Maureen Droney and for Jane and Candace and all those guys who help her, who never lets her foot off the gas, cares all the time, takes care of us all in big ways. So, shout out to you, Maureen. I know you're out there. We love you. And also shout out to you guys. Thanks for coming down and doing this. It was important. We learned a lot and could not have two better spokespeople to do it. Dave, take us home.
I think it's going to be short and sweet, Herb. Okay. You're either part of the problem or you're part of the solution. This is timely, it's necessary, and we've all, those of us that earn a living do this, we've all been bitten and harmed by all these things, and it's time. Let's get together and get this done. We'll see you next week.
See you.